and appreciate that. We're now on to delegations respecting item 10.1, expansion of subsidy for air conditioning to low-income households, BOH 24010A citywide. Our first delegate is Daniel Chin from the Hamilton District Apartment Association. Daniel, is Daniel here? Welcome, Daniel. Come on down to the podium, and once you begin your presentation, you'll have 5 minutes, and you'll get a warning at the 4-minute mark. Welcome.
Dustin. Good morning, Madam Chair and Mayor, and members of Public Health Committee. My name is Daniel Chin, President of Hamilton and District Apartment Association. We know that extreme heat, often called heat waves, is an issue due to climate change, and it certainly can affect seniors, low-income tenants, people with disabilities, and even those that are homeless. And I think we can all agree that health, safety, and well-being of Hamiltonians is a priority. And much progress has been made thus far on the foregoing by Hamilton Public Health Services, climate change initiatives, city staff, and all members of this Public Health Committee. Today, I will mention 3 things which I wrote in an open letter to the Mayor and members of City Council, which was sent via email on last Friday, May 31st. The first is on the expansion of subsidies for air conditioning to low-income households and landlords. We need to advocate for more funding from all levels of government, federal, provincial, and not just municipal, to help provide affordable air conditioners to those at risk. The provincial funding, which is capped for Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program eligible applicants, which if approved, gets $350 to buy an air conditioning unit, is not enough. And also not enough for installation and or utilities. The municipal funding of $52,500 from climate change reserves for providing air conditioning units, the equivalent to 100 to 150 units, is not enough, as we have some areas or neighborhoods with a higher proportion of seniors, disabilities, and those with vulnerability. Next, we need subsidies for rental housing providers to retrofit these buildings. City of Hamilton has a Better Home Hamilton pilot program, which has still not come into effect yet. City of Toronto has an energy retrofit loan program that offers fixed, long-term, low-interest financing to enable building owners to invest in low-carbon, energy-efficient capital improvements. We in Hamilton should expand our Better Home Hamilton pilot program to more eligible buildings, which includes multifamily residential, social housing, hospitals, and long-term care. Secondly, I would like to read a quote from an article by Jamie Sokonak from National Post. Every time a city council adds a new rule to improve the quality of life of renters, it needs to be considered what those rules will do to the overall housing supply. Be careful of short-term gains that can cause long-term pain. Over the last few years, we have had rent increase guidelines, including 2021 rent freeze, well below inflation in general, and also much lower than the increasing cost of running rental properties, i.e. property taxes, insurance, repairs and maintenance, utilities, and etc. Thus, many property owners with long-term tenants are currently operating at a negative cash flow, and hence we see many of them exiting or planning to exit the rental housing industry. And furthermore, the house prices today indicate that these properties, when sold, will turn into owner-occupied homes by home buyers from the GTA moving into Hamilton. Suffice to say, we're expecting a significant loss of rental units, an additional cost of additional workload in the increase, the loss of rental units. Lastly, I would just like to highlight there is already enhanced tenants' rights and protection to install air conditioning in their units in Bill 97, Helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act, that has received royal assent last year, but still to be proclaimed at the provincial legislature. Again, in a nutshell, landlords are not able to prohibit the installation of air conditioning units in rental apartments. And of course, there are following conditions, which you can read in the amendments to Schedule 7 of the Residential Tenancy Act. But in closing, I would like to reiterate two quotes again from the National Post article by Jamie Sokonak. Every time a city council adds a new rule to improve the quality of life of renters, it needs to be considered what those rules will do to the overall housing supply. And the status quo on heat certainly isn't fun, but neither is the housing shortage. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor, and members of Public Health Committee for the opportunity and for the time to listening to my delegation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Are there any questions from the committee? I see Councillor Danko is on the list. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just one question. A lot of your delegation, you spoke about the need for comprehensive strategic approaches to any decisions that this or any other council makes. So would your preference moving forward when we are making decisions is that we base those on the professional recommendations of staff, along with consultation with working groups, stakeholders, and not just one-off ideologically motivated directions that might come forward from the floor?
Through the chair to Councillor Danko, all of the above which you mentioned to integrate in the next committee meeting when further developing or discussing the implementation of the adequate temperature bylaw.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Danko. Councillor McMeekin, please.
Yes, thanks for your presentation. Through you, Your Worship, you mentioned in passing Bill 97, which has been passed but not yet proclaimed by the Lieutenant Governor, I assume. What's the impact of Bill 97 once it is proclaimed on this particular issue?
Through the chair to Councillor McMeekin, as mentioned, it enhances the tenants' rights and protection to install air conditioning in their units. And of course, I did send a letter last Friday, and it is all in details as stipulated in that act, which is still to be proclaimed by provincial legislature.
Okay, so supplemental question through you, Your Worship. The legislation would enable tenants to not be prohibited from putting air conditioning units in their units. Is that the intent?
Through to the chair to Councillor McMeekin, correct.
Okay. Final question. What percentage of maybe you don't have an answer to this, that's again out of left field. What percentage of existing landlords actually install air conditioners in their units?
Through to the council, through to the chair, Councillor McMeekin, I don't have an exact figure off the top of my head, but I could find out that information for you and send you an email.
The reason I ask, thank you for that. The reason I ask, Your Worship, is I have a fundamental belief, I think, that landlords have an obligation here to provide the necessities of life. I don't think they currently have a particularly good record of that, so there's some good landlords who perhaps would, but not all. The other related question around that, and I think you admit the presenter had, and thank you for this, you had mentioned the real cost, that the $52,500, which I read in the report, was nowhere near able to cover the cost of the demand for this kind of response. Do you have an estimate of what the real cost would be?
Through the chair to Councillor McMeekin, again, that information was fairly new. It was just discussed last Thursday at an extreme heat working group discussion. And one of the attendees from ACON did mention it is not enough. And for me, and I was just emphasizing that amount. But I think it is fairly commonsensical that 100 to 150 units ain't going to supply the whole of Hamilton, especially those are at risk.
Well, thank you for that. That's actually what's driving my question. The quote you read about, I think I'm summarizing perhaps hopefully accurately. Every time a municipality makes a decision, understand there are implications of that. And I guess my concern, Your Worship, is related directly to the quote that you, sir, made. Would we be opening a door to costs that would be so extreme for our municipality in isolation to be covering that we would want to take pause and think a little bit more about the overall cost? That's my question.
So through to the chair, to Councillor McMeekin, as mentioned to Councillor Danko, it is important to take into consideration of all of the above, also in particular to costs when deciding to implement this adequate temperature bylaw in due time. As you probably know, beginning of this year when budget was passed, not everything could have been passed. So we have to be very cognizant of all of the discussions thus far from subject matter experts, from city staff and the Public Health Committee.
I want to be clear, Your Worship, that's exactly why I raised the point.
Thank you.
To be absolutely clear about what we're getting
Appreciate that. Councillor McMeekin, thanks very much. We have one further person that would like to ask you some questions, and that's Councillor Cratch. Please go ahead.
Thanks for repeating that quotation from the paper twice. It helped me retain some of it. And I'm not going to interpret it. I'm just going to ask you to explain it if you could and why you brought it up, because I think there's inherently something being unsaid there. What you said, if I recall correctly, is every time a council tries to improve the quality of life, and we'll use in case of tenants, is what you're saying here in this situation, we ought to be careful when we try to improve the quality of life for others, because it may impact the supply of housing. Can you take that farther? What do you mean by that?
Through to the chair and to Councillor Crutch, as mentioned, I did send a letter last Friday, May 31st, to our mayor and of course all members of City Council, and my answer is actually in that letter. And of course some of it was mentioned in the time that I had to delegate today.
Can I just, I don't have that letter, and it's not added as added correspondence, is it? I don't see it as an added correspondence. I think you're referring to a letter, and I'm not sure that the members of the committee have received the letter. So if you sent it on May 31st, which would have been Friday, did we receive anything?
I haven't received anything. The only correspondence I received on Friday was 5.4.
Okay, and so just so that you know, that correspondence is not in our package. My staff are here as well, so maybe we can go through my email. Sometimes email gets sent to me instead of the clerk, and then we have to make sure that it actually gets sent around. So I'm asking my staff to have a look for it as well. But unfortunately, you're referencing a letter that we are not in possession of. So I just wanted you to know that, okay? Thanks.
Yeah, so through the chair, could you answer the question? I don't need to read the whole letter out. What I'm asking simply is just if you could expand on the quotation you chose for today, which said that if we have a quality of life, or as a goal here, that it may threaten the housing supply. What do you mean it may threaten the housing supply? Can you just expand on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Crutch, I think the quote is very self-explanatory. But as mentioned, any added costs to rental housing providers does impact negatively the rental housing industry. And I think it is very commonsensical if there is increase in costs, as mentioned, additional costs or additional workload, it will increase the loss of rental units.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, Councillor Crutch?
Sort of, thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any further speakers on the list. Oh,
I've heard from
Clerk?
the city clerk that the correspondence being referenced has been received and is being placed on the council agenda.
it's being placed on the council agenda. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So thank you for your delegation, Daniel, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next,